Thank you so much for being here today. A little housekeeping. We're going to keep our microphones on mute just to keep the call rolling without too many interruptions. And if you want to change the screen that you're seeing, you can do that on the bottom. If you're on a desktop or if you're on your phone or your iPad, it's in the top right-hand corner. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, my colleague Sherry is here. She's going to be answering in the chat and collecting questions. There are a few different points throughout the info session where we can ask questions and we can take a moment to review things. This presentation is being recorded in speaker view, so your names and your video won't be shown. And we'll be adding it to our YouTube channel within a week, and it'll be available on our website as well. So the MississaugaArtsCouncil.com, and when you go to the microgrant page there. So just wanted to give you a heads up on that, and don't panic about taking notes for everything. Everything in this presentation is available in the guidelines. I took all of the information directly from the guidelines, and so it's all available to you. So we're going to start off today. My name is Susan Durnan. I'm the administration lead of the Mississauga Arts Council, and I run our Matchmaker MicroGrant program, which is such a pleasure because I get to read these amazing proposals by artists like you who are doing really incredible things here in Mississauga and really adding to the art sector. So it's always exciting for me, and I'm excited to tell you more about our program. So let's get started. So today's info session, this is what we're going to be talking about today. What are microgrants in general? Microgrant eligibility, both as you as an artist and your project. We're going to talk about our Matchmaker MicroGrants, preparing your application, a few things you need to do before you get into the web form. Then we're going to talk about the web form requirements. Then we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into the budget and the web form. We'll view some templates of the budget, and we'll view a sample of the web form so you have a sense of what you're getting into. Then we'll look at microgrant assessment by our peer jury. We'll review some important dates and deadlines, and we have room for questions. So it's a big hour, but we're going to get through it, and it's going to be fun. Fun, she says. All right. So what are MAC MicroGrants? Our microgrant program provides funding to individual artists to support the creation and presentation of their impactful projects. These microgrants often target areas of interest or need within the local arts sector, and they have been catalysts for collaboration across artistic practices. The funding for our microgrant program comes exclusively from our own fundraising efforts. It's not coming from other sources. We send volunteers to Rama Gaming House to represent MAC, to work shifts for us. And through those volunteer shifts, we get the money that runs our microgrant program. So a big shout out to our volunteers for that. This program wouldn't be possible without them. All right. So what are the first steps for microgrants? The first one, download the guidelines. It's a 8-ish page document. It outlines everything we're going to talk about today. It even has a frequently asked questions section, and it has everything you need to know before you apply. So you can go, there's a URL here. And if you're on our website, MississaugaArtsCouncil.com, if you go to the program menu and you find MAC MicroGrants, on that page, there's a big red button that says read the guidelines, and that's how you can download them. And then after you've reviewed the guidelines, you've prepared all of your materials, the application form is here. It's this form.jotform link. And again, it's available on that microgrant page with a big button that says submit an application. It'll take you right to the web form. All right, so on to eligibility. So for you as the applicant, there are a few eligibility requirements. So you have to be an individual artist or an arts group living or based in Mississauga. So you have to have a Mississauga address on your application, no exceptions. MAC membership, you do not need to be a member of MAC to apply. We're a charity, we're a membership-based organization. We offer lots of great benefits to our members, but you don't have to be a member to hit submit on your application. However, if you are successful, we will ask that you join MAC or renew your membership if it's not current. But that's a future problem. It's not anything you have to do before you submit your application. So how many applications can you submit? Only one. If you submit more than one application, we'll only look at your first application. If you hit submit and it's not the day of the deadline and you think, oh no, I forgot to include a document, you can always contact me and we can figure out how to get it added to your application. But only submit one application because we'll only send one of your applications to the peer review committee. If you are a previous microgrant winner, if you've already received a microgrant from us in the past, you are eligible to apply, but only if you've completed all of your previous microgrant work. If I have not received your final report, if MAC has not approved your final report, you have an outstanding microgrant and you are not eligible. If you have any questions about eligibility, again, you can contact me. My email is susan@macarts.ca, and that's the email in the microgrant guidelines as well. So that's individual eligibility. Now let's move to projects. So, we've reviewed this eligibility. You are a Mississauga artist. You are only submitting one project and all of your previous microgrants are done. Amazing. You're eligible. Let's find out if your project is eligible now. So projects, they must be relevant to arts and culture in Mississauga and follow the guidelines of the Matchmaker funding stream. They also have to include a public-facing activity or element. This is required by our funder, and it is non-negotiable. There has to be some sort of access to your project. It could be maybe you're doing a visual art exhibition and it's open to the public. Great. Maybe you're a musician and you're putting on a concert or releasing music. Great. You're a filmmaker and you're going to be releasing your film. Perfect. All of those are public-facing activities, and they all are eligible. Location. Your project must take place in Mississauga, or the majority of the work for your project needs to take place in Mississauga. Again, this is non-negotiable, has to take place in our city. Multiple applications. Again, you're only allowed to submit one application, and even if you have two amazing projects on the go, you have to pick. You can only submit one application for one project. And then previously funded projects. So if you did receive a microgrant in the past from us and you want to apply for an extension of that project or another, the next year's version of that project, you can. There's an extra question in the application where you just have to say, yes, I've received funding and this is why my project is growing or why it's important for me to do this project annually. So there's that. Whoops. Okay, so let's get into our funding streams. This round, we only have Matchmaker MicroGrants. These are actually a really flexible kind of funding that MAC does. So they're really designed to help you kind of kickstart a project or get something done. And they're a matching grant. You can receive 50% of your total budget to a maximum of $3,000. It has to be matching funds. So to get that $3,000, your full project budget needs to be $6,000 or more. If your total project is only $4,000 for everything all included, you're making your music video and it's going to be $4,000, congratulations, but we'll only go up to 50% of that, which would only be $2,000. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, we can chat about that in the questions if that doesn't make sense. And we'll get a little into this matching funds and in-kind. Okay, so eligible Matchmaker MicroGrant projects. So we talked about your project eligibility, and this is just a little bit of a deeper dive into it. So eligible Matchmaker MicroGrant projects, they're open to any artistic discipline. We don't limit to specific artistic disciplines. You don't have to be a dancer. You don't have to be a theater person. You could do anything. And it can also include multiple. It could be, dance, film, and theater all combined, or music and visual art combined. Totally fine. The world is your oyster. Again, it must have an accessible public-facing event or activity for Mississauga residents. So that could be releasing your music to the public, doing a music video that's released digitally online. It could be a theater or dance performance. It could be a concert, a visual art exhibition, as long as it's not sort of a closed invite-only event, as long as it's open broader. Projects need to take place in Mississauga, as we talked about. You also have to pay artist fees to Mississauga-based artists. Again, this is really important. Mississauga Arts Council really believes that artists deserve to be paid for their work. And so we want to make sure that Mississauga artists are receiving artist fees. The other thing that in your application, your eligible project, it should demonstrate confirmed sources of revenue. So that could be maybe you already have a sponsor, or maybe you have another grant that has sort of got you started on your project. That's fantastic. But you know what? There's other kinds of revenue. We like to call it in kind, or maybe you have volunteers helping you out, or maybe someone has been kind and they've donated you a rehearsal space for free. And so that's what we're talking about with in kind. It's someone giving you something to offset the cost, right? If you have a rehearsal location donated to you, I mean, that's saving you, what, $500 a rehearsal in rental fees, right? So so that absolutely counts. You can include that in your budget. Or maybe you have a friend who is really great at social media and they say, you know what, I'm happy to do your social media for you. I'll do it for free. That is in-kind sponsorship of your project. So any of those are great. And that in-kind volunteering, you know, I'll help you with that. If you help me with that, it does count as confirmed revenue. So that's great. Again, in kind, we can get to that during the question period because we often get questions about that. So eligible Matchmaker MicroGrant projects. In your application, we also want you to indicate the career impact for you or the other artists involved. How is this going to help your career? And why are you doing this now? You also need to tell us about the impact on the audiences who are going to experience your project. It's not just about you doing your work, you know, that's important, but it's also important that audiences are going to get something out of it, and it's going to help them, you know, be closer to the artists. You also have to include an achievable work plan in your application. So we will get to application requirements a little more. And then I have these fun little hot tips we're going to get through the presentation. And these are just things to sort of keep in mind as you're writing your application, of things that our jury is going to be looking for, or mistakes that Susan has made. Yes, I've made many mistakes while writing grants. And so just some things to help you write your grant a little bit better. And this hot tip, it's this public-facing event or activity. It is absolutely crucial to your project. And if your project doesn't have a public-facing event or activity that's accessible to Mississauga residents. Accessible doesn't mean free. It just means they need to be able to buy a ticket or access it. And it's absolutely crucial to the successful projects. Oh, another hot tip. Again, we already talked a little bit about the in-kind, but we can come back to it if you need as well. So what are Matchmaker MicroGrants? What are some costs and what are some eligible expenses you can include in your project? Well, eligible expenses could include, need to include artist fees for Mississauga-based artists. You can also, other eligible expenses are venue rental costs, both for performances and for rehearsals. Maybe it's a recording studio. Those are all eligible. Equipment rental costs or production costs. You have to, you know, rent some lights to do your photo shoot, or production equipment. You're putting on a concert, you need a sound mixer and some amps. That can all be included. Eligible expenses can also include things like marketing and promotion of your project. So, you know, there's very forward-facing costs of making your project come to life. And go. So in the eligible expenses, things that our Matchmaker MicroGrants will not cover include things like tuition for post-secondary programs, research projects and research-related expenses, expenses that aren't directly related to the production of your project. So, you know, if you have some travel costs for some meetings that, you know, you're trying to collaborate with someone and then they don't end up being a part of your project, they're not covered. Costs related to capital purchases, capital being, you know, you need to buy a computer or you're buying, you know, a building, we're not going to help with those. Ineligible expenses, fundraising activities or the costs to fundraise, and any activities occurring outside of Mississauga are just some examples of ineligible expenses. If you're working on your budget and you do have a question about, is this eligible or ineligible, just shoot me a message. I'm happy to sort that out for you. And something else to keep in mind, I mean, if you have some of these more ineligible expenses, but they're part of your project, you can include them in the budget, but just indicate in your budget what you'd be spending your Matchmaker microgrant funds on, which ideally are artist fees, venue rental costs, direct sort of service related questions. So that's a little heavy. Kind of did a few deep dives. Sherry, do we have any questions in the chat?
Not right now.
Okay. Take a minute, let some of that sink in. So yeah, what did we talk about? Eligibility. So artists, Mississauga-based artists, and eligible projects are Mississauga-based projects with arts. They could be any artistic discipline. Matchmaker is the only stream we have open right now, and it is a matching grant. So 50% of your total budget to a maximum of $3,000. And it has to have some sort of public-facing benefit to Mississauga residents. And other than that, it's kind of open. I know we put some eligible, ineligible, but it is a very free application without as many limits as some other project grants. So again, you can learn more by downloading our guidelines. And let's get into how to start preparing your application. So we have a web form that you need to fill out to apply for our microgrant. Here's the link for it here. Again, you can find it through our website. It's linked to a number of times in the PDF guidelines. So there's lots of different ways you can find that web form. Make sure before you go to the web form that you have your application materials prepared. The web form, although you can fill it out, I believe there's an option to save and come back to it, but I don't trust technology. And neither should you. Prepare everything in advance so you're just copy pasting, uploading your documents, and you've done the bulk of your work in another program. My hot tip here is just that. Create a Word document or a Google Doc or some sort of an option on the side. Type in the questions, copy paste them from the guidelines. And then the best part about it is when you're working in a Word document, you have Grammarly and you have spell check and you have word count. So you can prepare all of that in advance, make sure everything is correct, and then drop it in. I have definitely written answers in web portals and lost all of my work. So please don't do a Susan. This is my hot tip. Create it in a separate document. The best part of doing that, then you have it saved. So when you go to do your Ontario Arts Council or your Canada Council grant for the same project, you already have answers started. And then you can copy those answers and work it for other grants. So it's a really good idea to just work on them in another document, not our application form. Before submitting your application, so once you've done your Word doc, you have all of your uploads prepared, you can go to the web form and type everything in, and you will have an option at the end to review your answers and to print a copy of your application. Please do that. In the back end, we might be able to get you a PDF copy. We might be able to find it for you, but we don't guarantee that. So please make sure to save a copy as well before hitting submit. Just to have a copy for your files. It's really important. So those are my hot tips before you get started. So again, preparing your application, one of the things that is required is a budget, and we have a template. You can see the link here. It'll take you to a Google Doc. There's a white page that says, please save a copy, please download a copy, and do that. So step one, go to this link. Again, it's available on our website and in the guidelines. Step two, save it on your computer or in your Google Docs, and then you can start filling it out. If you're trying to edit this document and request access, I won't give you access to it. And because if I did, then 100 people who also have access to this document start to see your budget, not the budget template. So that's why you have to save it locally on your computer to edit. And then so download a copy, do your editing, save it as a PDF or Excel file, and then you will upload it in section 3 of the application web form. So we talked about that. Don't request access to the Google file. Save a copy yourself. Otherwise, everyone is going to see your work and they're going to enjoy a well planned out budget. And my other hot tip is when you're saving your budget after you've edited, include your name when you're changing the file name. So it'll be MicroGrant budget -template. Change it so that your name is in the file. When we're working in the back end and we have, MicroGrant budget template 1, template 2, template 3, if everyone names theirs the same thing, it's really hard for us to keep track of things. So include your name in all of your document files. It's a really helpful tip. All right. That was all prep. Now let's get into what you actually need. So application requirements, section 1 of the application. So you get sort of an intro page that says what microgrants are. The next page, we want to know about you. So we need your name, your contact info. We'll ask for a website link, either to your artist website or maybe a project. I know filmmakers, they might have their own website, but for each of their films, they actually make a film website. So maybe they want to use the film website here for their film project. Totally fine. Or maybe you're applying and you have your own website, but the project is for your band and you put the band's website. Fine. Whatever website is the most relevant to the project. There is an optional link you can include, and that's your artist directory link from Saga Arts Hub. So Saga Arts Hub is sort of the member news and events website that the Mississauga Arts Council runs for our members. And each of our members gets a free artist directory listing, and it's a really great portfolio. That's the word I was looking for. A really great artist portfolio page. So if you're a member and you have a great page, you're welcome to include that link as well. On this page, that information is required, and we also require 2 documents uploaded. The first one being your artist CV or resume. We don't need to know that you're a barista at Starbucks, but we do need to know about your work as an artist. So make sure that whatever resume or CV that you include is really talking about your artistic achievements and your work as an artist. So that's the first upload. The second upload is 3 work samples. You actually have 2 options. No, it's just a single document in PDF form or doc. But on that document, you can include 3 links if you want, right? And we can click to get to those links. It could also be in this document too, if you're a writer, maybe you include pages from your book that you want the jury to review. However you can work if it's videos or links to videos or links to songs or actual written things, or maybe it's a PDF with some of your visual art, any of those work, but just make sure it's all in one document. Include the links or the images or written work, but also make sure to describe why you chose that and how it demonstrates your work. The jury will look at these work samples to kind of get a sense of who you are as an artist, if you're capable of undertaking the project that you're trying to undertake, and if you've done similar things. We want artists to explore new areas and try new things, but there's a difference between, releasing your first music single and going touring with Beyonce. And there's a lot of steps along the way. So this is just a chance for the jury to kind of see, where you are as an artist and if you're capable of doing what you want to do. That's the idea of the work samples. And that's exactly my hot tip is don't just include a link. Describe why you chose that link and why it's relevant and why the jury's looking at it and what it talks, like here's my film that I was the director of, and this is why I'm capable of directing this new film. Perfect. Hopefully that makes sense. We have room for questions a little later. So that was section 1 of the application. Then you'll hit next, you'll get to the second page, which is project information. So here we start getting into, what's your project title? tell us about your project in 50 words, which these two things, if you're successful, MAC is probably going to use in our marketing to describe your project, your winning project. So keep that in mind. Another important question, what are the impact and outcomes of the project? So how is your project going to be important to the community and the audience? And what are you going to get out of this project? We also want to know who your intended audience is and how you're going to reach them. It could just be, general population of Mississauga, but how are you going to get them to come out to your concert, right? So that's what that question is about. Then we get into a little bit more, you still have to fill it out. It's still an important part of your application, but these next 4 questions are a little bit more admin housekeeping, right? What artistic practices are represented by the project? And it gives you an option to select which ones are included. How many artists are involved in the project? Keeping in mind that if you're doing a concert and you've hired a filmmaker, like a photographer or a videographer to sort of capture the event, they're artists too. Fun thing to think about. It's not just the people on stage. It could be that there's artists in the back end as well who are going to be involved. Then how much funding are you requesting? Again, it's 50% of your total budget to a maximum of $3,000. And then we also have your proposed start date and end date of your project. Start date being when you start working on the project, not necessarily the day of the concert, and the end date being when your project is done. And that could be the date of your concert, or it could be, a couple weeks later after you sort of settle the tickets and this, the thanking your artists and paying your artists afterwards. So here's my fun little hot tip. These first 4 questions are more in detail. It's more, what are you telling us about your project and getting us excited about your project? And they're really important parts of your application. And then these last 4, again, they are important, but it's more that admin side, just sort of, us keeping track of how many artists and, how much money and start and dates. Again, it's more admin, but they are really important to the application as well. So we're not quite done our project information. Those were the questions we needed to fill out. Now we get into our required document uploads. So once you get all of those information on the previous page typed in, you'll be uploading 2 documents. The first one is just a project proposal. So in 1 or 2 pages, you might already have it. You might have a slide deck. You might have a 1-pager that describes your project that maybe you gave to another sponsor. And it just sort of says, the who, what, when, where, why, the details of your project. And maybe it includes, if you've booked a venue already, if you have some confirmed funders who are part of it, you can let us know all of that. So it's really an opportunity in a couple of pages rather than us saying, in 50 words. So you can really get a detailed, comprehensive description of what your project is. And it's a chance to get the jury as excited about your project as you are. And then the second upload in this section is your work plan or timeline. So make sure to include key milestones that you need to achieve throughout the plan, and make sure it's feasible. If you're planning a concert 2 weeks from application date, that might not be a feasible timeline because you probably won't know if you get funding within 2 weeks of your application. So keep things like that in mind and really take the time to sort of lay out what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, and how you're going to achieve it. And that's your work plan. It doesn't have to be a huge, long document. It just needs to lay out important dates and also talk to, what you're requesting in your budget. There we go. So those are the required documents. Optional documents. There is an area at this point if you have additional comments or information that you weren't able to include in the other documents, you can include more. And there is an option for another upload. If there's another supporting document that you think is really important to your application and you didn't have a chance to upload it, you absolutely can. These 2 optional ones, though, if you don't put anything in, that is perfectly fine as well. It's just an option for a little more information to MAC and the jurors to understand your project better. So that's the project information section 2. Now we get to section 3, which is your budget information. So again, when we were preparing our application a few slides ago, we were talking about downloading the budget template, filling it out, changing the name to include your name, and uploading it. And that's exactly the required document upload here. After you upload your budget, then there's a little bit more required information. So there's a question. We want you to list and describe any confirmed sources of revenue for your project. So that could be, I have an Ontario Arts Council grant for $5,000 and it's confirmed. I have a sponsor who's going to donate my rehearsal space and it's a value of $300. Maybe you don't have a value, but you have someone saying, I have 25 volunteer hours confirmed and things like that you can just sort of explain some of the other contributions that have already been committed to your project. Then there's a question, has your project previously received a MAC MicroGrant? It's just a yes or no. If you answer no, you're done. If you answer yes, another question will pop up just saying, if you answered yes, describe how your project has grown or why it continues to be impactful for audiences. So that's really the question of, okay, you already got a microgrant for it. Why are you doing this project again? Or why are you extending the project? Just to give our jury a little bit more information about that. Do we maybe want to pause for a few questions? It's a lot, I know.
One was actually, you asked a question about the budget temp, if there would be a demo for it.
Yes, there is. That is exactly what this slide is right here.
Yeah. And then the next one was from Jenny from New Voice Philharmonic Choir.
Great.
If there was funding for groups to apply in the near future, but.
Yes. Yeah. So last year we had two different funding programs. We had our microgrants for individual artists, and we had a program called SNAP for arts groups. This year we don't have the SNAP program anymore. So our microgrants are available for individual artists and for arts groups. And I'm not sure if I'd have to double check the guidelines to see if they're available to big corporation organizations, but they're certainly open to arts groups. So hopefully that helps. Okay, great. So I want to take a minute to look at the budget template and also to review a sample of the web form. So on our MississaugaArtsCouncil.com MicroGrant page, we do have options for getting us to the Google Doc version of the budget. We also have just an Excel version that you can download. That's all on our website. And we also, this year, we have a sample web form. So you can kind of see what it would look like. Even though all of the questions in the guidelines were copy pasted into the web form, it's kind of nice to see the layout. So we're going to do that now. So give me a second while I hopefully share my screen differently. Okay. So when you click the link to the Google document, this is what you're going to see. You're going to see copy document. And don't try and change the URL up here. Just click make a copy and it'll copy it to your Google Drive or it'll download something. And if you're struggling with that, then again, on our website, you can download the second link here. This Excel file is on our website. You can just download directly to Excel, or if you're on Apple, it'll open in Numbers, whatever spreadsheet program you have. Again, don't ask for to edit here. Make sure you save it to your own. So this is what the budget looks like. So when you download it yourself, and then you'll get to this. So it gives you a chance to fill out some information about your project here. And then it's hopefully pretty easy. We just have, confirmed revenue. So if you already have the money in your hand or someone has promised you the money, you can include it in this column here, this confirmed revenue. Maybe you've applied for a grant and you haven't heard yet, because it happens. Most grants take 3 to 6 months to get back to you. So you can include that here in the pending revenue. And I know there's a notes section always kind of, I put the numbers in, but the notes are really important. And it's an opportunity for you to, here where it says other grants, you can say, applied to Canada Council for this much, applied to Ontario Arts Council for this much, or applied to the City of Mississauga for this much. Sponsorships, you can put the total amount in, and maybe in the notes you can include the company names that have sponsored. We don't necessarily need individual donor names, but it's nice to see what companies have have done. Again, in-kind support, you can describe and say, in-kind support, volunteer hours, or donated space, or, different things like that. So really use this note section to sort of tie the numbers back to what you've been talking about in the project proposal and your work plan. So yeah, revenue up at the top. And then down here in expenses, you don't need to worry about column D, the actual expenses yet, unless you've already spent money on your project. If your project is already underway and you're applying for a matchmaker to kind of get it finished, maybe you already have expenses, and that's fine. But if your project hasn't started yet, you don't need to use this column. Just use your projected expenses, which is really, here's what my project, here's what I think it's going to happen. So we have artist fees, venue costs, production, supplies, printing. And then we have an option down here for other. And again, use the notes to describe what those other costs might be. And then the greatest thing is if you save this on your computer, then when it, and if your application is successful, in your final report that you'll give to us when your project is done, you'll need to include an updated budget. And at that point, you can change your pending revenues over to confirmed revenues, and you'll be able to, you can leave your projected expenses and you can update these actual expenses for your final report. And if it's saved on your computer already, it's so easy. You just need to drop in a few new numbers. These numbers down here should calculate properly, but always double check. You never know. And again, use the notes section of the budget to really explain where the numbers are coming from and what they're supporting. Do you have any questions about the budget?
We had one about the MAC sponsorship requests.
Yep.
I've answered it saying that was where you would put the requesting amount from MAC up to a maximum of $3,000.
Exactly. So that would go here.
Yep. And then Susan Feshbolsky had, what does individual contribution refer to? Our own funding applied, ?
Absolutely. So, if we put on all of our info here, maybe we have another $2,500 grant and we're getting, $200 in ticket sales and we have $300 in in-kind support. But okay, so a $6,000 project, look at that magic. But what if our expenses are $7,000? So we've lost $1,000. We need $1,000 more. So where's that coming from? Maybe it's coming from your pocket. And that's what an individual contribution would be. So this is, we don't necessarily like to see an artist having to pay out of pocket, but sometimes we have to, just to top up. And that's where the individual contribution is coming from. So if you don't have anything in the individual contribution line, that's great. We don't necessarily want to see it, but sometimes you as an artist do want to contribute your own money towards the project, and that's perfectly fine. And that's what individual contribution might be.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That was the other questions I had so far.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay, so why don't we go to the sample application form? So this one is available on our website. The actual application form doesn't exactly look like this, but this is a sort of a PDF version of it. So again, that first page is going to just talk about microgrants. What are they? And get you, the guideline download, more information on our website. Then section 1 is our applicant information. So again, name, email address, phone number, your website, that Saga Arts Hub profile link. Then we have the option to upload our CV resume and then upload a document with the work samples. Section 2 is our project information. We have the project name, short description, impact, benefit on the target, the artists involved, and the audience. I guess this is more, I should double check the wording on that one. It's more on the artists involved and sort of the artist community. And then who's the intended audience and what's your plan to reach that audience? Then again, those more admin questions, but still important. Artistic practices represented by the project. How many artists are involved? How much money are you requesting? And hot tip, I don't have a fancy little yellow thing, but answer this question at the end of your application, not the start. I've definitely done that at the start to get to page 2 to get the questions. and I didn't go back and edit it, but then the budget changed as I was writing the document, the grant, and then this number was wrong when I hit submit. So double check that number and make sure it matches the number in the budget that you're requesting. We have project start date and end date, your upload of a 1 to 2 page project proposal, upload of your work plan, and here's that optional. If we didn't ask you a question that you really wanted us to ask, you can provide it more information here. And if you have a really amazing document that you want to include that really sums up your project that you didn't get a chance to upload, you can do that here, the additional support documents. Again, additional support documents. Maybe you're collaborating with another artist and you want to include their CV or their bio to say, you know, you already have my CV on the first page, but here's the artist I'm working with and why they're amazing. That would be a really great way to use this additional support document option. Okay, section 3, we have budget information. So again, download the spreadsheet, fill it all out, then upload it here. List and briefly describe all of your confirmed sources of revenue. So again, that could be the in-kind or volunteer hours. It could be another grant. It could be sponsorship. Maybe a coffee shop has donated lunch for your artists. That's great. That all comes in here. Has this project received a MAC MicroGrant in the past? Yes, no. If yes, this question will pop up, just asking, you know, why are you continuing this project? Why is it still impactful? How is it growing? And then our final page is just a submission, you know, confirming that you understand eligibility, the information you've provided is correct. And I believe on the actual form, there's an option to review and print. Here we just have the submit button. Any questions about the web form?
None about the web form, but I have something
More about the budget?
The budget.
Okay.
And this one's more for clarification. So
yeah,
Claudia's asking, can you use a past fee for a project expense? So for example, I'm applying for a grant for a comic book that I'm looking to sell at Cranberry Christmas market by MAC, but since it won't start until the winter, can we use a past fee as a project expense? And they add, or the upcoming small arms arts market, like fee for that.
As a expense that you want the microgrant to pay for?
I think clarification is needed in the sense of what is the a grant for? Is it for applying for the comic book itself or for the comic book that's already completed that they're looking to be added to markets? That's the question, right?
Yeah. So I think in this case, you know, if your project is already done, you know, the comic is already created, it's already published, we can't really contribute to that. We can't get, you know, the funder logos can't be added to it. So I think that would probably not be eligible. However, if you're creating a new comic book or a new project, then absolutely. And that the previous one would be a really great work sample. You know, here's one I created. I'm really excited to make my second one. And I'd like you to support the creation of my second one, which would then have that, you know, at the end, it will be published and it will be available to the public for purchase.
Yes. They said the comic book is not published yet. So,
okay.
Yeah. Okay. Then yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the big thing is, you know, if we come in, we want to be a little selfish and we want to get Mac's logo on your project. So if it is something that's being published or if it's your concert poster, we want to make sure that we can get our logo on it. And so, so if it's already published, if it's already happened, we're probably not going to support the project, even if it's a great project.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And no further questions, but if anybody else, oh wait, never mind. In-kind revenue from Carlene. If it's volunteer hours, do we need to say the actual number of hours or quantify the value of this in in-kind revenue number of hours X rate per hour?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you do have volunteers, you can find formulas online, but yeah, if you have, say, 2 volunteers and they're each working 20 hours and it's saving you $15 an hour by having these volunteers, then absolutely figure out the math for 15 times 20 times 2 and include that as an actual revenue number in your in your budget, because if you didn't have those volunteers, you'd have to pay someone that hourly rate for the same amount of work. And that's, again, you can use the notes section, drop in the number that you came up with, and then use the notes section to say, 2 volunteers times 20 hours each at $15 an hour to show where that number came from.
Right.
Yeah.
If anybody else has any further questions, please feel free to add them to the chat.
Great. Okay, so that was a deep dive into the budget and the application web form. So we're almost there, guys. I know it's been a lot. So after you submit your application, MAC is going to collect them all and we'll pull together a jury. These are artists and industry professionals in Mississauga, and we give them a scoring system to evaluate the applications. And so their evaluation criteria, they'll review applications based on impact and innovation. Is your project going to really be important to the arts, growing the arts and the audiences? Is it something kind of fun and new that we haven't seen before? Or is it kind of same old, boring? They're also going to review the qualifications and experience of the applicant. Again, we want you to grow in your artistic career and try new things and, reach beyond what you're comfortable with. But again, there's a difference between releasing your first song and opening for Beyonce, right? So where in that spectrum, what's the next step that you are capable of? They're also going to review based on connection to the community or audience. Is your project relevant to the audience you're trying to attract? They're going to review your project schedule and work plan to make sure that it's realistic and achievable. And they're also going to look at your budget to make sure that the numbers make sense, and that the numbers are realistic. If you go too small and say, oh, I'm going to rent, Hammerson Hall at the Living Arts Center for $200, it's probably not a realistic number. Make sure to call to get that actual quote. So things like that, that the jury will be looking for. And I do have a little hot tip on this page, and really write your application. And then with fresh eyes, before you hit submit, just read through your application as if you were a jury person, as if you were a jury member, rather than as if you were the applicant. And because one of the things that they're going to be really interested in, again, I have here the successful microgrant applications will be intriguing and valuable or impactful. They'll enrich arts offerings available to Mississauga audiences. A really important one here is demonstrate a commitment to supporting the Mississauga arts community and contribute to the positive career development of artists involved. And then be feasible projects that are possible. So really have a review of your application, just as if you were a jury, kind of thinking about this evaluation criteria and making sure that you're just checking those boxes off. All right, so important dates and deadlines. Microgrants are already open. They opened at the beginning of February. We have the information session, that's today. Thank you for joining us. Microgrants will close. So we need to receive your application by 5:00 p.m., no later, on March 24th. If you have questions, you can absolutely email me, but keep in mind, I work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and I can't always get back to you within the same day. So if you have questions, get them to me early so I can answer your questions, rather than a panic at 4:00 on March 24th. I probably won't get back to you in time. So keep that in mind when you're working on your application. Again, never trust technology. Get your application in sooner than later. Once applications close, they go to the jury. We're hoping to be able to let people know around April 14th whether they've been successful or not, and publicly announce by the end of April. For your projects that you're applying for, we want them to be completed by the end of the calendar year. So you have until early December, with your final report being due, if you're successful. Final reports are due 30 days after your project is completed, or by December 15th, by the end of the month. So those are just some important dates. But really the biggest one is that Monday, March 24th, before 5 p.m. All right, so next steps. Thank you so much for being a part of this info session. We have next step, grab the guidelines if you haven't yet. All of this information from today's session is in the guidelines. We also have a link here to the web form. Again, all of these documents that we did the deep dive in, the guidelines, the job form, they're all available on our website. So again, mississaugaartscouncil.com, go to the programs menu, look up microgrants, and on that first page, just a quick, don't have to scroll down too far, and there'll be, you know, a button for read the guidelines, a button for download a template, and a button for submit an application. And all there. Okay, again, March 24th is the date seared in our minds. We will not accept late submissions, only one application per applicant, and it needs to go through the web form. If you do need accessibility support, you can reach out to me and we can work something out, but it has to go through the web form. That's our chance for more questions.
Next one's from Carlene. What about the hours the grant applicant puts in to coordinate the project? Can this be in-kind revenue? She also asks, does the application need the actual names of participating artists, partners, and volunteers?
Those are two great questions. One, whoever the grant applicant is, if they're sort of the administrator, they're going to be the one running the project, maybe not the artists on stage, but the ones coordinating everything. That's a really important role, and your fees as an artist producer, right? Think about a concert. The person who's doing all of the admin work and the contracting and that, they're the event producer, and that is absolutely an artistic role. So yes, that can absolutely count towards the expenses and trying to get revenue covered for that, or it can also count for the volunteer hours for the in-kind revenue. Yeah. So yes, and the second half of that question was also a really important one, a really good one. Can you remind me?
It's basically just asking, and the answer to if there's an application need the actual names of participating artists.
Oh, that's a really good one. Sometimes you don't know who's going to be involved yet, and that's totally fine. But sometimes you already know who you're going to be working with or who you're going to be asking, and I feel like that strengthens your application. It shows that you've already put work in. You're not just sitting alone dreaming up a project that may or may not happen, right? By having artist names and saying, I've reached out to so-and-so and so-and-so, this artist is already committed, trying to get these 3 artists involved as well. I think that really strengthens your application. So if you have those names, definitely include them.
I don't see any further questions at this time, but if anybody else does,
we can stick around for a few more rounds
for a little bit. Savanam Carlene, and the administrator and applicant also be a paid participating artist.
Yes. Yep. You can be both the event producer and a featured artist, and receive your artist fee and admin fee as well. Yep. Great. Well, let's stick around. Feel free. We'll stop recording at this point. If you do want to jump on and ask a question personally rather than in the chat, you're welcome to do so. Again, we've recorded this session. We'll be getting it up online. All the information is up on our website. And if you have any questions, please reach out. Thank you so much for being here today. And March 24th before 5 p.m.